So today I'm here with dietitian Tai Ibitoye. Thank you for joining me, Tai. So it's great to have your expertise on board today, and it might seem like a really obvious one, but I think we should start with explaining what are the various different food groups.
Yeah, sure. So there are 5 main food groups: fruit and vegetables, starchy carbohydrates, protein, dairy or alternatives, and fats and oils.
Okay, Tai, let's start with fruit and vegetables.
Yes.
It seems obvious, and I think most people know that we need to eat lots of fruit and veg. However, statistics tell us that the average person is still not getting enough, and in fact, only 31% are eating the recommended amount. We hear 5 a day all of the time, but what does that actually mean?
So having a 5 a day means having 5 portions of different fruits and vegetables a day. So it's not 5 of each, it's having 5 portions of different fruits and vegetables a day. And actually, 1 portion is about 80 grams. So I've got an example for you.
Okay.
So 80 grams is about a hand-sized fork.
Okay.
So this equates to 1 medium-sized orange, like so. So as you can see, it fits.
Hang on, let me see, what can I find here? That's a sweet potato that fits into my, so is that a portion?
That is a portion,
Okay,
yes.
that's really helpful, because who measures their food?
Yes.
And well, why is it important that we're getting this amount? It's at least 5 portions. Why is it important? What's it doing? Is it all about vitamins?
That's a good question. So actually, the 5 a day guidance is based on the World Health Organization recommendation. So there's a lot of evidence showing that when we eat at least 5 portions of fruits and vegetables a day, it can reduce our risk of certain chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes, some cancers, stroke and heart disease. And actually, I'm sure as you know, there's so many research out there. And actually, as you mentioned, fruit and vegetables contain a lot of vitamins, minerals and other nutrients like fibre that we all need in our diets.
Yeah, so we associate fruits and vegetables with fibre,
Yes.
don't we? And that's really key to a healthy diet.
Yes, it is.
Why is that?
Well, with fibre, it's a really important nutrient and it has so many health benefits to us. So what we know with fibre is that it has gut health friendly properties, so think things like constipation, diarrhea. We know that fibre can help to alleviate some of these symptoms and also prevent some of these symptoms too. We also know that fibre plays a role in reducing cholesterol levels, so it might be beneficial for those who have high cholesterol levels, and also it helps to stabilise our blood sugar levels too. So fibre is a powerhouse nutrient that we all need in our diet.
Okay. Are there any particular fruits or veggies that are really good for getting fibre?
I don't like to discriminate, so all fruits and vegetables contain really good amounts of fibre. However, there are some that contains more fibre than others. So green beans and peas contains a lot of fibre.
Okay.
And if you're thinking about fruits, so berries in particular contains a lot of fibre.
Oh, that's quite surprising,
Yes,
actually.
it is. So think of things like strawberries, blackberries, raspberries that contain a lot of fibre.
And they're all quite low in sugar as well, aren't they?
They are.
Which again is often quite surprising. So is it safe to eat lots of fruit? Because obviously there is sugar in fruit, and especially thinking about people perhaps who have diabetes or who are at risk of diabetes.
So I like to say moderation is key. So a lot of people tend to vilify fruits and say, oh my gosh, I need to stay away from fruits, it contains a lot of sugar, but that isn't the case actually. And sometimes people mistake sugar in fruits to free sugars that you find in cakes, biscuits, donuts and fizzy drinks. Those type of sugars are not the same. So essentially, we don't need to reduce our sugar intake from fruits. However, we need to reduce our free sugar intakes from cakes, biscuits, fizzy drinks and so forth. And actually, if we're consuming fruits, they contain so many nutrients apart from sugars like fibre, which we need, and vitamins too.
What might be the downsides if we don't consume enough fruits and vegetables in our diet?
So, as I mentioned before, fruits and vegetables contain a lot of vitamins and a lot of minerals. So, of course, if we're not eating many fruits and vegetables in our diet, then of course we're going to be at risk of so many nutritional deficiencies. So, fruits and vegetables are a good source of vitamin C. If we're not consuming too many of that, we might be at risk of vitamin C deficiency. Fruits and vegetables contain fibre as well, so of course, if we're not eating too much of that, then we're not getting many fibre in our diet. Fibre plays a role in so many bodily functions, such as digestive system, healthy gut, alleviating constipation that some people might experience, really good for maintaining our cholesterol levels and our blood sugar levels too. So essentially, fibre has a lot of benefits, and we all need to include a lot of fibre in our diet.
Okay, so fruit and veg are really, really good for us.
Yes.
We all should really try to eat 5 a day or more.
Yes.
What are your top tips for making sure that we get enough fruit and veg in our diet?
I guess the first one would be when you're having your breakfast, for example, in the morning, whether that's a porridge or a breakfast cereal, it might be worth adding some fruits into it. So instead of adding jam or honey or sugar, fruits can help to sweeten that breakfast porridge or cereal. And of course, that's a way to up your 5 a day intake. So adding things like bananas in your porridges maybe, blueberries, or any fruit of your choice. So that's one of my first tips.
Okay.
You can also snack on them. So cucumber sticks, carrot sticks, celery sticks, really good vegetable snacks that you can consume and also contribute towards your 5 a day. Another thing that I like to do is when I'm having my main meals, like stir-fry rice or maybe like soups or curries, I like to bulk it up with a lot of vegetables. So adding frozen mixed veg where possible, beans and pulses, those are good ways to actually increase your 5 a day.
Really great advice there. I think you've given us lots of different options for how we can add extra fruit and vegetables, so hopefully something for everybody. You've given me a thing or two to think about as well,
That's
so thank
good.
you. So, carbohydrates, I think they
Yes.
sometimes get a bad rep. Can you tell us why they're actually an important part of a healthy diet?
So what we know is that with carbohydrates, it's a really good source of nutrients, well, a lot of nutrients actually, like iron, B vitamins, and some calcium as well. And actually, carbohydrates are our main source of energy. So we all need carbohydrates in our diet to give us the energy we need to sustain us throughout the whole day. The brain as well needs a lot of energy as well. So when we are consuming carbohydrates, it's giving the brain a lot of energy to fuel our thinking and also our concentration levels too.
Okay, so can you give us some ideas then of some carbohydrates that we can include in a really healthy diet? And then I think typical things that people have are rice, pasta,
Yes, of course.
bread, but why is it important to have whole grains if we can?
So with the whole grains, that's where the fibre is. So with whole grain options, it contains a lot of fibre and actually contains a bit more nutrients like iron and B vitamins and some calcium too.
Is there such a thing as good and bad carbohydrates?
I like to say there isn't a good or bad carb. All carbohydrates can fit in a healthy, balanced diet, but it's really important to be mindful of the portion sizes, but then also how we actually prepare the carbohydrates too. So oftentimes some people tend to deep fry it, which of course increases the calorie content and the fat content. So really it's about how it's prepared and how much we're having. So with carbohydrates, it should make at least a third of our diet overall. And that's a rule of thumb. We like to say every day aim for 3 to 4 portions of carbohydrates in your diet. So you're probably thinking, what does one portion look like?
Yeah.
So one portion can be 1 medium slice bread, of course up for the whole grain version because that's where the added fibre is. It can be 2 to 3 heaped spoons of rice or pasta, of course aiming for the whole grain options. And actually 2 to 3 portion size is about 75 grams.
Okay.
And another way to include carbohydrates in your diet is adding porridge. So aim for about 3 tablespoons of porridge. So that's a way to make sure that you're being mindful of your portion sizes.
And yeah, do you have any top tips for how to incorporate carbohydrates, healthy carbohydrates, into our diets?
Going for whole grain options like whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, brown rice, porridge, quinoa. These are some ways to actually increase our carbohydrate intake, but then also make sure that we are having the healthier carbohydrates in our diet. Also, be mindful of how you're actually preparing your carbohydrates. So avoiding deep frying foods, try to roast it or boil it instead.
To summarise then, carbohydrates are not bad, they are not the enemy, and they can absolutely be consumed as part of a healthy diet.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to dairy. So dairy it's another food group actually that sometimes gets bad press, but for someone who isn't lactose intolerant and doesn't have an allergy to dairy, should we be including dairy in our diets?
Absolutely. So dairy includes really important nutrients like calcium, which we know is really important for good bone health and also dental health too. Also contains other nutrients like potassium, iodine, also protein as well. And altogether, these nutrients can combine to keep our bones healthy, our muscles healthy, and also our nervous system healthy as well.
Okay. Of course, another reason that people choose to go plant-based instead is because of the environment, or, you know, for other ethical reasons like animals. So if people are not having dairy, what should they be looking for in dairy alternatives?
So with dairy, what we know is that it contains important nutrients like calcium and iodine in particular. So for those who want to go for the plant-based alternatives, they need to make sure that it's fortified with these nutrients. So calcium fortified plant-based products and also iodine fortified plant-based products as well.
Okay, all right. Right then, well, let's move on to our next food group, which is protein. So why is protein considered so good for us?
So we know that with protein, it's really important for growth and repair in our body and also maintenance as well. But then also protein really helps to keep us fuller for longer. So it's really important for those who want to manage their weight. So it's really important, plays a role in weight maintenance because it keeps us satisfied.
How much protein should we actually be eating? And also, what are some really healthy sources of protein?
So it varies from person to person. So of course our protein requirements depends on our age, it depends on a particular health condition, and it also depends on how active we are.
Right.
But as a rule of thumb, we should be having between 2 to 3 portions of protein a day. So you're probably thinking, what does one portion size look like?
Exactly what I'm thinking.
So one portion size can be about a handful size of any protein product. You
Okay.
mentioned about healthy proteins.
Yeah.
So 3 heaped spoons of beans or pulses is a healthy protein and actually meets our protein recommendation. Also, a handful size of unsalted nuts and seeds can contribute towards our protein intake, a handful size of fish or chicken. And of course, there might be other protein foods that might essentially be unhealthy if we consume it in excess, like fatty red meats, things like bacon, sausages, ham. If we're consuming too much of it, obviously it contains saturated fats and it's not ideal for our overall health.
So it's interesting actually to me that so many people are already meeting their needs for protein, but for people who think that maybe they're not, what are some helpful ways to add more protein to the diet?
So some people can do things like adding beans and pulses into their meals, such as salads, curry, rice dishes, stews where possible. That's another way to boost up the protein intake. So any beans of your choice, like kidney beans, black beans.
Okay, well that's really, really good to know. I think especially as we get older, people sometimes they need more protein, don't they? So it's really important to make sure that we're getting enough. So now we're on to our final section, and that's fats.
So if you look at the Eat Well guide, you'll notice that the fats and oil element is actually outside. That shows you that we only need to have a very small amount in our diet.
You can see that online, can't you? And it's the plate.
Yes.
And it shows the proportions.
Yes.
And the oils and fats is just a tiny little sliver.
Just a very small amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Are there any fats that are healthy and then fats that are less healthy?
Yes, they are. So the healthy fats are what we called unsaturated fats. So we need to be consuming those fats instead of the less healthy fats, which is the saturated fats.
Okay.
The reason why is because saturated fats are linked with increased risk of heart disease and high cholesterol levels, which we don't want at all. So a way that we can just be more mindful of our saturated fat intake is to swap it with unsaturated fat options, such as avocado, olives, olive oil, nuts and seeds.
Okay. So what are some examples then of the saturated fats?
Yes, so saturated fats, you can find it in foods like butter, ghee, coconut oil and lard.
Does low fat always mean that it's better for us? Because I know that often we're recommended to get the low fat option, or does it mean that it's hiding other things like sugar, for example?
Yes, so low fat doesn't equate to a healthier option. As you mentioned, and rightly so, some low fat products tend to be high in sugar and also high in other ingredients that we don't want to include in our diets. Low fat does have a place in our diets. So of course, if individuals want to reduce their fat intake, they can go for low fat options like milk as an example. So instead of full fat milk, you can go for the low fat options like skimmed milk or semi-skimmed milk. Or even with cheese. So cheese is quite high in fat actually, but there are some low fat options like feta cheese and also mozzarella.
Now, Tai, before you go, because I can't let an expert like you leave me without
Sure.
squeezing in a few extra questions about nutrition. So firstly, what about salt? Because this is a really important to keep an eye on, isn't it?
Yes.
How much is too much, and how can we make our food flavourful without salt?
Well, the UK government recommendation states that we should have no more than 6 grams of salt a day.
How much is that?
So that's equivalent to 1 teaspoon.
Right.
But actually, most of us are eating way more than that.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of salt hidden in foods, isn't there? Especially if you're buying sort of processed or ready-made foods.
Yes, so yes, a lot of the foods, especially ready-made meals, contain a lot of hidden salt. So that's why it's important that we are reading the food labels to see what is high in salt, and then where possible compare food labels and go for the low salt option.
Okay. And if people are cooking food at home, which is
Yes.
obviously preferable if they can, how can people flavour their food without adding salt to it?
That's a very good question. So what I like to do in particular is add different herbs and spices. So I tend to go to different markets like we are now and go for herbs and spices like paprika, ginger, garlic, turmeric, black pepper to make my food more flavoursome.
And that kind of brings me on to plant-based alternatives.
Yes.
A lot of people assume that because they're plant-based, that they'll be better for you. Is that the case?
So with some plant-based options, they can be quite high in sugar, can be quite high in fat and salt as well. So it's really important that we are reading the food labels to see the salt content or the sugar content or the fat content and go for the low options instead.
Basically, it's a case of everything in moderation. Tai, thank you so much. Some incredible advice there. I think the key message is being that it's never too late to make some positive changes to your diet, and even those very small changes really do add up to make a difference. So whether it's adding some fruit to your breakfast, switching your grains to whole wheat grains, or thinking about how you can have healthier sources of protein, it all makes a big difference. So good luck with making some healthy changes.